I never thought I would die. I never thought I would stand before Jesus. And I never thought I would return with a warning that would haunt me forever. But here I am, telling you this, because you need to hear it. My name is Emma. I'm just 12 years old. I didn't grow up thinking about heaven or hell, and I didn't spend much time worrying about what happens after we die. Honestly, I thought life would go on forever. At least for me. But I was wrong. One moment, I was playing outside, laughing, running. Just a normal day. Next, I was gone. And what I saw on the other side, it changed my life forever. Because Jesus showed me something about 2025. Something terrifying. And now, I have to warn you, before it's too late. Before all of this happened, my life was just normal. I was a 12-year-old girl living in a small town with my parents. I went to school, played with my friends, and spent hours watching videos on my phone. I didn't think much about God or the afterlife. To be honest, I didn't really care. It's not that I didn't believe. My mom talked about Jesus sometimes, but it never felt real to me. Heaven and hell seemed like things adults talked about to scare kids into behaving. I wasn't a bad kid. I was just distracted. Most of my days started the same way. I'd wake up early, drag myself out of bed, and get ready for school. My mom would already be up, making breakfast, telling me I needed to pray before I eat. She always said the same thing. Emma, don't forget that God is watching over you. I'd nod, mumble a quick, "Thank you, Jesus," and go back to scrolling on my phone. Looking back now, I wish I had listened. Because I remember, just before I died, there were signs. Strange little things that I brushed off, but now feel like warnings. I remember the news on TV talking about floods, earthquakes, and wars. The anchors always sounded so serious, but I never paid attention. My mom did, though. She would shake her head and say, "The world is changing, Emma. You need to stay close to God." I would roll my eyes and go back to texting my friends. Then, there was the nightmare. A few days before it happened, I had a dream that shook me to my core. I saw people running in the streets, screaming, crying. The sky was dark, filled with smoke. I saw buildings collapsing, and somewhere in the distance, a loud horn was sounding, so loud that it made my chest feel like it would explode. I turned to run, but I felt something grabbing me, pulling me into darkness. I woke up gasping, sweating, my heart racing. I told my mom about it, but she just said, "Maybe God is trying to tell you something." I didn't believe her. I wish I had. That morning felt like any other. I got up, got dressed, and went outside to play. The sun was shining, the air was warm. I had no idea that in just a few minutes, I would be gone. Forever. Or at least, that's what I thought. In the afternoon of that day, I was running through the yard, the wind rushing past my face as I laughed. My little brother Noah was chasing me, his tiny feet thudding against the ground. It was just an ordinary afternoon. Blue skies, warm sun, and the distant sound of birds chirping in the trees. I wasn't thinking about death. I wasn't thinking about Jesus. But then, it happened. It started with a sharp pain in my chest. It came out of nowhere, like someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed. I gasped, stumbling forward. My vision blurred, and the world around me tilted. Something was wrong. I tried to call for my mom, but my voice came out as a whisper. My legs buckled. The pain in my chest grew worse, tightening, burning. My breath became shallow, like I was trying to suck in air through a straw. Noah stopped running. "Emma?" His little voice was confused, worried. I tried to answer him, but I couldn't. Then, everything went black. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I opened my eyes, I was lying on the ground. I saw my mom above me, her face pale, her hands shaking me. "Emma, stay with me, baby, please." I wanted to answer her, but I couldn't move. My body felt heavy, like I was sinking into the earth. I could hear her crying. I could hear Noah screaming for my dad. And then, the worst part. The moment I realized I wasn't breathing, I could see my mom's lips moving, but her voice was fading, distant. The edges of my vision darkened, like I was looking through a tunnel. I heard sirens. I saw my dad rushing toward me, but I was already slipping away. A strange stillness filled the air. The sounds around me became muffled, distant. My mom's screams, the sirens, they were fading. And then, suddenly, I felt light, weightless. I wasn't on the ground anymore. I was floating. I looked down, and that's when the terror hit me, because I saw myself, my own body, lying lifeless in my mother's arms. My dad was kneeling beside her, shouting at the paramedics. Noah was crying, clinging to my mom's dress. I wanted to reach for them, to tell them I was okay, but I couldn't. I wasn't in my body anymore. I was somewhere else. Then, the pull came. It was like an invisible force wrapped around me, yanking me upward. I screamed, but no one heard me. I tried to fight it, but I had no control. The world below me grew smaller and smaller, until it was gone. And in the next moment, I was surrounded by darkness. Complete, endless darkness. I was dead. I floated in the darkness, weightless and silent. There was no sound, no wind, no warmth, just an endless void stretching in every direction. I wasn't afraid at first. I didn't feel pain anymore. My chest no longer burned. My body no longer ached. It was almost peaceful, like I had been pulled into a deep, dreamless sleep. But then, the realization hit me. I was dead. A sudden wave of terror crashed over me. I wasn't supposed to die. I was just a kid. I wanted to go back, to wake up in my mother's arms, to feel the warmth of the sun, to hear my brother's laughter. But I couldn't move. I couldn't run. I was trapped. And then, I heard it. A distant whisper, low and chilling. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt them, crawling under my skin, seeping into my bones. It was like the darkness itself was alive, watching me. The whispers grew louder. More voices joined in, surrounding me. Some were laughing, a cruel, mocking sound that made my stomach twist. Others were screaming in pain. A shadow moved in the distance. Then another. Shapes, shifting in the darkness, coming closer. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. A cold breath touched my neck, and a voice rasped, "She doesn't belong here." And just like that, a bright light exploded before me. The darkness was ripped away as I was pulled upward, fast. The voices screamed in rage as they disappeared below me. I gasped as warmth surrounded me, wrapping around me like a protective shield. My fear melted away, replaced by something else, something holy. I looked up, and that's when I saw it. A tunnel of blazing light stretched before me, pulling me in like a current. It was brighter than the sun, yet it didn't hurt my eyes. The walls shimmered, pulsing with a golden glow. And then, I felt it. A presence. Something greater than anything I had ever known. A love so strong, so overwhelming, that it made me want to fall to my knees. I was no longer afraid. I was being pulled toward something, someone. And deep in my soul, I knew exactly who it was. I was about to meet Jesus. As I moved through the tunnel of light, the overwhelming presence of Jesus surrounded me. His love, his power, it was beyond anything words could describe. It felt like every question, every fear, every doubt I had ever carried was laid bare before him. And then, in an instant, I was somewhere else. The tunnel faded, and I found myself standing in what looked like an endless open field. But it wasn't like any field on earth. The grass shimmered like gold under a sky that stretched endlessly, filled with radiant hues I had never seen before. A soft, warm breeze moved through the air, carrying a fragrance that filled me with peace. Then, I saw him. Jesus stood before me. His presence was overwhelming. His robe was brilliant white, glowing with a light that seemed to come from within him. His face shone with a radiance that made my soul tremble, not out of fear, but in absolute awe. His eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, I felt completely known. I tried to speak, but no words came. Then, he spoke. His voice was powerful, yet gentle, like a melody woven with authority. "You have been chosen to see what is coming." My heart pounded. Jesus raised his hand, and suddenly the field disappeared. In its place, I saw the earth. But what I saw next shook me to my core. I saw the world as if I were looking down from above. But it wasn't the world I knew. It was in chaos. Cities were burning. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, swallowing the sun. I saw earthquakes splitting the ground, massive tidal waves drowning entire coastlines. People were running, screaming. Some fell to their knees, crying out for mercy. Others shook their fists at the sky, their faces twisted in rage. It was as if the entire earth was groaning, convulsing under the weight of something unseen. I saw governments collapsing, riots in the streets, famine spreading like a disease. And then, I saw him, a man, standing at the center of it all. At first, he looked kind, powerful. He spoke with authority, and people worshipped him. They followed him blindly, believing he had the answers, that he could bring peace. But then, his face changed. His eyes turned black as night. His smile twisted into something sinister. The world had been deceived. He wasn't a savior. He was the deceiver, the Antichrist. And then, I saw something even more terrifying. I saw a mark. People were lining up to receive it, on their foreheads, on their hands. Some were hesitant, but those who refused were dragged away. I saw a woman crying, clutching her child, refusing the mark. A man in a uniform ripped the child from her arms. She screamed. The child was gone. "No!" I cried out. "Make it stop!" But Jesus didn't look away. His eyes were full of sorrow. "The time is short," he said. "The world is being prepared. I'll have to entrust the task of spreading the truth to them." I turned to him, shaking. "What do I do? What do I tell them?" He stepped forward, his gaze locking onto mine. "Warn them." His voice echoed in my soul. "Tell them before it is too late." And with that, the vision shattered. The next thing I knew, I was falling, plunging back into my body. My eyes flew open and I gasped, choking on air. I was back, but I would never be the same. I woke up gasping, my chest heaving as if I had been drowning. The hospital room spun around me. The beeping of machines, the harsh fluorescent lights, the sterile scent of antiseptic. It all came rushing back at once. I was alive, but the weight of what I had seen pressed on my soul. The vision, the warnings, Jesus' voice echoing in my heart. It was real. Tears blurred my vision. I tried to sit up, but my body felt heavy, as if I had been drained of all strength. The machines beside me beeped erratically, and suddenly, the room wasn't empty anymore. My mother sat in the chair beside my bed, her hands clasped together in prayer. My father stood near the window, staring out into the night, his shoulders tense. When my mother saw me stir, she gasped, rushing to my side. "Oh, my baby! Praise God, you're awake!" She cupped my face, her hands warm but trembling. My father turned, his face a mix of relief and disbelief. "How do you feel, sweetheart?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I tried to answer, but my throat was dry. My mind was still in that place, still reeling from what I had just witnessed. I licked my lips and forced out a whisper. "Jesus." I saw Jesus. The room fell silent. My mother's breath caught. My father stiffened, his expression unreadable. I saw the way they exchanged glances, their hesitation. They didn't believe me. I swallowed, my voice growing stronger. "I died, Mama. I saw him, and he showed me something. Something about 2025. The world. It's changing. Something is coming." She blinked rapidly, tears pooling in her eyes. "Sweetheart, You had a terrible accident. You were in a coma. Maybe it was just a dream. Emma's mom was a devout Christian for as long as she could remember. She read her Bible every morning, attended church faithfully, and had raised Emma to know and love Jesus. She wasn't the kind of woman who wavered in her faith. She believed in God's power, in the miracles of the Bible, and in Jesus' return. Yet, when her own daughter just came back from the brink of death, claiming to have seen Jesus and received a warning about the future, Linda hesitated. She wanted to believe, she really did, but something inside her resisted. It wasn't that she doubted God's ability to reveal things to people. It was that she had seen this kind of thing before, too many times. Over the years, she had heard countless stories of people claiming they had died and met Jesus. Some described heaven in vivid detail, others spoke of visions of hell, and every time people would get excited, share the testimony, and then move on. Nothing ever seemed to change. Even in her own church, there were people who had claimed to receive messages from God. Some said they had prophetic dreams. Others said they had been caught up in the Spirit. But in the end, their messages often conflicted with one another, and some of them even proved false. Linda had grown cautious. She had told herself that God still spoke, but she also believed that not every vision came from Him. Some were born from emotions, some from fear, and others, though she hated to say it, could even be deceptions. The Bible warned about false prophets, about people claiming to speak for God when they did not. And now, here was Sarah, her own daughter, telling her that Jesus had given her a vision of the end times. Linda wanted to believe her. She could see the fire in her daughter's eyes, the passion in her voice. Sarah wasn't lying. She truly believed everything she was saying. But that didn't mean it was real. It was a dream, she said. I shook my head. It wasn't a dream. It was real. I saw Jesus. He told me to warn people about the deception, about the Antichrist, about the mark. My father exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. Listen, he said, his voice measured. You've been through a traumatic experience. Your brain was deprived of oxygen. Hallucinations are common in near-death experiences. I stared at him, my heart sinking. He was rationalizing it. They weren't listening. No one wanted to hear the truth. I tried again, my voice urgent. Please, you have to believe me. I saw what's coming. People will be deceived. They'll take the mark thinking it's for their own good, but it's a trap. Mama, people are going to suffer. We have to tell them. My mother reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. Sweetheart, just rest for now. We'll talk about this later. I wanted to scream. There might not be a later. That night, as they slept in the chairs beside my bed, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My heart was heavy. The urgency in Jesus' voice still echoed in my mind. But how could I warn people if no one would listen? A few days later, I was discharged from the hospital. My body had healed, but my soul felt raw, burdened by what I had seen. I couldn't stay silent. I began telling my friends, my family, my church, anyone who would listen. Some people nodded politely, as if humoring me. Others outright dismissed me, saying I was just a kid who had a vivid imagination. But then, strange things started happening. It began with small things. My phone would glitch whenever I tried to record my testimony. Videos deleted themselves. Messages I sent to friends, warning them, would disappear. Then, it escalated. Shadowy figures in my room at night. Whispers in the dark when I was alone. One night, I jolted awake, my body paralyzed. The room was pitch black, but I felt something there, watching me. Then, a low, distorted voice slithered into my ear. Stay silent. My blood turned to ice. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I could feel a heavy presence pressing down on my chest, choking me, suffocating me. I panicked, my mind racing. Jesus, help me. And just like that, it was gone. I shot up in bed, gasping for air. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Tears streamed down my face. This was spiritual warfare. Something didn't want me to speak, but that only meant one thing. The message Jesus gave me was real, and I could not stay silent. After that terrifying night, I knew I couldn't stop. The attacks only proved that the message was real, that Jesus had truly spoken to me. But I also knew I couldn't fight this battle alone. I prayed constantly, asking God for strength. I read my Bible with new understanding, seeing connections I had never noticed before, and I kept trying to share the message, despite the resistance. Then one night, everything changed again. I had fallen asleep praying, my Bible still open beside me. But as soon as my eyes closed, I felt a shift, as if I were being pulled out of my body. Suddenly, I was standing in a vast, empty place. The air was thick with tension. The sky above me was dark, swirling with ominous clouds, but in the far distance I could see a faint glow, like fire on the horizon. And then I wasn't alone. Jesus was standing before me. He was radiant, clothed in white, his face shining with a light that was both beautiful and overwhelming. When he looked at me, I felt everything: his love, his sorrow, his urgency. He raised his hand, and the world around us shifted. Suddenly I saw 2025. I stood on a busy city street, and everything seemed normal at first. People walked past me, glued to their phones, laughing, talking. But then I noticed something strange. There were large digital screens on every building, flashing messages in different languages. The words were bright, hypnotic, almost alive. A new world is coming, a better world, a united world. The people around me didn't seem to notice the way the words flickered and changed, embedding themselves into their minds. Then I saw something even more disturbing. People were lining up in massive queues, stretching down the streets. They stood in silence, waiting for something. On their wrists or foreheads, I saw a strange glowing mark. I turned to a man beside me. "What are they doing?" He smiled, but his eyes looked empty. "It's the final step. Soon we will all be connected." I backed away, my heart pounding. Jesus' voice came from beside me. "This is what I warned you about. The world is being prepared." I turned and saw him standing among the people, but they couldn't see him. He looked at me with sorrow. Many believe this is the answer to their suffering, but it is a trap. The scene changed again. I saw cities in chaos. Fires raged, buildings crumbled, and people screamed in terror. The air was thick with smoke. Governments were collapsing. Banks were shutting down. People rushed to grocery stores, but the shelves were empty. I saw a family standing outside a store, pleading with a security guard. "Please, we just need food for our children." The guard shook his head. No payment, no food. The father held out his arm, showing that he didn't have the glowing mark. "Please, isn't there another way?" The guard's face turned cold. No mark, no access. I watched as the family turned away, tears streaming down their faces. The little girl clutched her mother's hand, her stomach growling. The vision changed again. I saw churches shutting down. Pastors were arrested, their churches sealed off. Believers were forced to meet in secret. They whispered prayers in basements, their Bibles hidden away like dangerous contraband. Jesus looked at me. "My people will suffer. Many will be tested, but those who endure will be saved." Then I saw him. A man stood on a grand stage, his arms raised as he spoke to the world. He looked kind, charismatic. His voice was smooth, dripping with confidence and power. The people adored him. They hung on his every word, their faces full of hope. I couldn't hear everything he was saying, but I knew the message. I will bring peace. I will heal the world. Trust me. Then he lifted his hand, and a symbol glowed on his palm. The crowd cheered. They were blind. I turned to Jesus, shaking. "Who is he?" Jesus' expression was grave. The deceiver, the one the world has been waiting for, the Antichrist. A wave of dread washed over me. I watched as millions of people pledged their loyalty to this man, unaware of the darkness behind his smile. Then, Jesus' voice filled the air. Warn them, before it's too late. The vision faded, and I gasped, jerking awake in my bed. My heart was racing, my body was drenched in sweat, but the urgency remained. I had seen the future. I knew what was coming. And now, I had a choice. Would I stay silent, afraid of being mocked and ignored? Or would I speak, no matter the cost? As small as I was, I understood the task. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and whispered, I will warn them. The weight of what I had seen pressed down on my chest like a heavy stone. My hands trembled as I pushed the covers off me, my mind racing. The vision was so vivid, so terrifyingly real. I knew without a doubt that it was a warning, a final plea from Jesus before it was too late. I couldn't just go back to life as usual. I had to do something. But who would listen? I had already faced ridicule and rejection. Even my own family barely believed me. If I went deeper and started talking about the Antichrist, the mark, and the coming deception, wouldn't they think I was insane? For a moment, I hesitated, but then I heard it. A whisper deep in my spirit. Do not be afraid. Jesus' voice was calm, but firm. Many will not listen. Many will mock you. But speak anyway. There are still those who will hear. I sat up, wiping the sweat from my forehead. I could feel a fire inside me, a sense of urgency I couldn't ignore. I picked up my Bible, flipping through the pages, my eyes scanning over familiar verses. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Matthew 24:10. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Matthew 24:24. I closed my eyes, gripping the Bible tightly. It was all there. Everything Jesus showed me was already written. And yet, the world was blind. I knew I couldn't stay silent. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen where my mother was making tea. She glanced at me, her eyes tired but loving. You barely slept, she said. Another nightmare? I swallowed hard. This was my chance. It wasn't a nightmare, I said softly. It was a vision. Jesus showed me what's coming. She sighed, setting her cup down. Sweetheart, we've talked about this. No, Mom. Listen. I grabbed her hand, my voice urgent. I saw the Antichrist. I saw people taking a mark, thinking it would help them. But it's a trap. They won't be able to buy food or live without it. I saw churches shutting down. I saw believers being hunted. That's enough, she interrupted. You're scaring me. Tears filled my eyes. Mom, I'm scared too. But it's real. Jesus is warning us. We have to prepare. And she pulled her hand away, looking at me with a mix of concern and sadness. I don't know what's happening to you, but I think you need rest. I felt my heart sink. She didn't believe me. But then I remembered. Jesus already told me this would happen. If my own mother wouldn't listen, how could I reach anyone else? Then the thought hit me. The internet. I didn't have a huge following, but I had a phone. I had my voice. Maybe someone out there would listen. I set up my phone, my hands still shaking, and hit record. I took a deep breath. This was it. But before I even thought about uploading my testimony, I knew I had to pray. I had already faced resistance, from my own mother, from my own doubts, and even from people at church who dismissed me. But I could feel it. Something unseen was trying to silence me. I had read enough in the Bible to know that when God gives a message, the enemy always fights to keep it from spreading. I wasn't going to let that happen. So I sat on my bed, clasped my small hands together, and closed my eyes tightly. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. "Lord Jesus," I whispered, my voice shaking slightly. "I know you showed me the truth. I know you gave me this message for a reason, and I know the enemy will do everything he can to stop me from sharing it." Tears welled up in my eyes as I thought about all the things that could go wrong. I had heard stories of people trying to share messages from God, only to experience terrifying attacks, shadows in their rooms, voices whispering in the dark, even physical oppression. I've already experienced some of this, and I don't want to face the same again. I tightened my grip, pressing my palms together. "Lord, I ask for your protection over me and over this message. Let no demon, no evil spirit, no force of darkness interfere. Let my phone work perfectly. No glitches, no crashes, no lost files. Let this message reach exactly who you want it to reach." I could feel the air in the room shift slightly. A warmth settled over me, like an unseen hand resting gently on my shoulder. I swallowed hard and kept praying. "If this message is truly from you, God, let nothing stop it. And if it is not, then shut every door. But I believe you showed me the truth, and I will not be afraid. Give me boldness. Give me courage. Let me not be swayed by doubt or fear." My lips trembled as I spoke the last words. "Jesus, cover me in your blood. Surround me with your angels. Every attack, every lie, every attempt to silence me, I rebuke it in your name. Amen." I opened my eyes slowly, exhaling a shaky breath. I didn't know what would happen once I hit upload. I didn't know if people would believe me, if they would laugh at me, or if the enemy would try to destroy my message before it could spread. But one thing I did know, I wasn't alone. Jesus had called me to speak, and I would obey. I hit the record button. "My name is Emma, and I died. Jesus showed me something terrifying about 2025, and I have to warn you." I spoke from my heart, pouring out every detail: the deception, the mark, the collapse, the Antichrist. I read the verses that confirmed what I saw. As I finished, I looked into the camera. "This isn't a conspiracy. This is real. Jesus is warning us because he loves us. Please don't ignore this." I hit upload. At first, nothing happened. Then, a few hours later, my phone started buzzing. Comments poured in. "I had a dream just like this. Jesus is warning us." I don't believe in God, but this gave me chills. This is happening. We have to wake up. Of course, there were skeptics too. Another crazy doomsday person. You just want attention. This is just fear-mongering. But I didn't care. People were listening. Seeds were being planted. Over the next few days, my message spread. People from all over the world started sharing their own dreams and visions. Others began turning to Christ, repenting, seeking truth. The messages kept coming in. At first, it was small Christian YouTube channels reaching out. Messages like, "Hi Emma, I saw your testimony and it really touched me. Would you be open to sharing it on my channel?" Or, "I believe God is using you. Would you be willing to do an interview?" I hesitated. The idea of speaking live, of actually putting myself out there beyond just a video, made my stomach twist. But I had promised God I wouldn't let fear stop me. So, I said yes. The first interview was nerve-wracking. My hands were clammy as I sat in front of the screen, waiting for the host to bring me on. But the moment I started speaking, something happened. Peace, confidence, boldness. I wasn't speaking for myself. I was speaking for Jesus. And people were listening. More invitations poured in, bigger channels, larger platforms. Some of the hosts told me they had never heard a testimony like mine before. Others admitted they were skeptical at first, but felt something powerful while listening to my words. The comments on my videos were overwhelming. People were repenting. People were waking up. Some said they had dreams confirming my testimony. Others shared their own near-death experiences, saying they had seen Jesus too. That's how this message is reaching you now. Somehow, through all the obstacles, through all the doubts and attacks, you are hearing this. Maybe you just stumbled upon it. Maybe a friend sent it to you. Or maybe you were meant to hear this right now, at this exact moment. I don't believe in coincidences. Jesus wanted this message to go out, and he made a way. But understand this, there is no middle ground. To stay silent is to take a side. To ignore the truth is to reject it. The warnings have been given. The signs are all around us. The world is changing, faster than we ever imagined. Prophecies are unfolding. Darkness is rising. And the line between truth and deception is becoming clearer every day. Those who have eyes to see, see. Those who have ears to hear, listen. But the choice remains yours. What will you do with this truth? Will you stand boldly, no matter the cost? Will you hold on to Jesus when the world demands your loyalty elsewhere? Or will you turn away, convincing yourself it doesn't matter? Because the time of comfortable Christianity is over. There will come a day when faith will cost you something, maybe even everything. Will you still choose Jesus? I hesitated. The idea of speaking live, of actually putting myself out there beyond just a video, made my stomach twist. But I had promised God I wouldn't let fear stop me. So, I said yes. The first interview was nerve-wracking. My hands were clammy as I sat in front of the screen, waiting for the host to bring me on. But the moment I started speaking, something happened. Peace, confidence, boldness. I wasn't speaking for myself. I was speaking for Jesus. And people were listening. More invitations poured in, bigger channels, larger platforms. Some of the hosts told me they had never heard a testimony like mine before. Others admitted they were skeptical at first, but felt something powerful while listening to my words. The comments on my videos were overwhelming. People were repenting. People were waking up. Some said they had dreams confirming my testimony. Others shared their own near-death experiences, saying they had seen Jesus too. That's how this message is reaching you now. Somehow, through all the obstacles, through all the doubts and attacks, you are hearing this. Maybe you just stumbled upon it. Maybe a friend sent it to you. Or maybe you were meant to hear this right now, at this exact moment. I don't believe in coincidences. Jesus wanted this message to go out, and he made a way. But understand this, there is no middle ground. To stay silent is to take a side. To ignore the truth is to reject it. The warnings have been given. The signs are all around us. The world is changing, faster than we ever imagined. Prophecies are unfolding. Darkness is rising. And the line between truth and deception is becoming clearer every day. Those who have eyes to see, see. Those who have ears to hear, listen. But the choice remains yours. What will you do with this truth? Will you stand boldly, no matter the cost? Will you hold on to Jesus when the world demands your loyalty elsewhere? Or will you turn away, convincing yourself it doesn't matter? Because the time of comfortable Christianity is over. There will come a day when faith will cost you something, maybe even everything. Will you still choose Jesus? Will you stand firm when your job, your friends, even your own family turn against you? When society calls you crazy? When laws are passed that make it dangerous to follow Christ? When fear grips your heart and whispers, "Just stay quiet," will you listen? Or will you rise up and say, "No matter what, I belong to Jesus"? Because the battle has begun. And you can't say you weren't warned. This isn't just a story. This isn't just another testimony on the internet. This is a call, a final call, to wake up, to prepare, to choose whom you will serve. Because whether you believe it or not, the time is coming when you will have to choose. So, choose now, before it's too late.